Chapter 3, Building Competitive Communities. This nation will be colorblind when whites proclaim their black blood like they proclaim Indian and European lineage. This nation will be colorblind when whites proclaim their black blood like they proclaim Indian and European lineage. A group's ability to compete is determined by its internal cohesiveness and self interest. Black Americans must therefore build functional communities within which they can ethno aggregate and practice group economics and group politics. A functional community can be best defined as a grouping of people who come together and organize for their own self interest rather than misdirected altruistic interest. Once built, whether based upon geographical boundaries, ethnic or racial commonalities, a community cares for the collective interest of its members. Building our own communities will allow Black Americans to become economically and politically competitive, but will also give us something we have never had, a chance to compete from the vantage point of our own physical space, cultural values, resources, institutions, and history. For the first time, we will be free to organize and work in our own best interest rather than the interest of a universe of ethnic and class competitors. Historically, societies were built upon three institutions that served as pillars: the family, the church, and the community. The communities are communities, or true communities, are communities of mind and physical structures within a space. Both are important, but no traditional society built on land that it. Okay. Both are important, but no traditional society built on land that it did not own or control has been successful or prospered. Neither the landless European serfs nor the landless Jews under the pharaohs of Egypt were able to do it. For this reason, Black Americans need a solid foundation of communities upon which to begin empowering ourselves. Like Moses, we must begin to build physical communities and maintain a strong sense of community. Moses used his vision of the promised land to mobilize his people for a 40-year journey to a land upon which Jews built functional communities, families, religious institutions, commerce, schools, and a strong sense of community. Boundary lines. The new color line. Nearly a century ago, W.E. Du Bois accurately proclaimed that the color line would be the problem of the 20th century. It is a new millennium now, and it is becoming clear that the problem of the 21st century will be community boundary lines. America is balkanizing along racial, ethnic, economic, and religious lines. Across America, groups are aggressively seeking territory or communities in which they can store their wealth, resources, and political power to enjoy and preserve for their future generations. As noted earlier, Hispanics, for example, are assembling their economic and political intentions behind their Spanish language and culture. They intend to use both. They intend to use both to capture territory, rights, and a political base within the United States. The practice of seeking territory for communities will intensify as more and more people from around the world immigrate to America. They come to America in search of a better quality of life, not to integrate with whites or to get along with black Americans. They are coming to this country to get ahead economically and to find wealth and fortune. They commit themselves to competing with any and all groups economically and politically on behalf of themselves, their families, and their native countries. Typically, their initial destination is close to or within black neighborhoods. They have learned from official and unofficial sources that they can find great opportunities in black neighborhoods. Within black neighborhoods, ethnic immigrants expect to find the least expensive housing, lax enforcement of laws and regulation, and little business competition. They also find readily accessible consumers, government assistance, easy access to elected officials, and employment opportunities. Though they are aware of the crime problem in neighborhoods, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. They find territory and build communities. As ethnics fill as ethnics fill in basic as ethnics fill in business voids in black neighborhoods with a modicum of success, they begin to practice ethno-aggregation. They bring in and aggregate their families and others from their native lands. They then develop more businesses. They they then develop more businesses in black neighborhoods. They then develop more businesses in black neighborhoods. As they capture territory, they establish powerful economies and political organizations using their ethnic culture, language, and religion as their common ground. Watching how these new arriving immigrants use a sense of community to build social and economic power bases should be instructional for black Americans. It takes a fully functional community to raise a child and to raise up a competitive race of people. Neighborhoods aren't enough. Neighborhoods are not enough. Neighborhoods are problematic for any group seeking empowerment. Unfortunately, most black Americans live in neighborhoods, not communities. A community signifies commitment, and a potential for power. Neighborhood does not. Webster's New World Dictionary defines neighborhood as a vicinity or physical place where there are people living near one another. The concept of a neighborhood implies an area that is residential in nature with lesser wealth, power, and status than a community. The majority of black Americans live in impoverished black neighborhoods and spend approximately 95% of their annual disposable income with people who live outside of the neighborhood. They spend only 5% of their disposable income in black neighborhoods. They spend 3% with non black black owned businesses that are located in black neighborhoods, but whose owners live outside the black neighborhoods. Thus, only 2% of black America's disposable income is spent in black owned businesses in black neighborhoods. It is impossible for any large group or neighborhood to be self sufficient on only 2% of its income. By spending its disposable income in other groups, businesses, and communities, Black America impoverishes itself and impedes the growth of functional communities. One benefit of Jim Crow segregation was that it forced blacks to build what could approximately be called quasi communities. Quasi communities. Unlike neighborhoods, where people simply live in the same area, during Jim Crow segregation, black Americans were unified with a code of conduct. They lived together because they had the same interests and needs, but equally as important, they trusted and depended on each other. From the Civil War until the end of the Black Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, blacks successfully built a vibrant culture, marginally marginally six. Mm, yeah. Blacks successfully built a vibrant culture. Mm, mhm. Marginally competitive schools, black churches, personal service businesses, and a professional class. Though they were small in number, these community assets produced jobs as well as products and services for black people. The desire for integration caused blacks to abandon their businesses, communities, culture, and code of conduct. Black Americans Black Americans' need to be accepted by white society was greater than their need to be accepted by black society. Today's black neighborhoods no longer qualify to even be called quasi communities because they no longer have a network of black businesses or a group code of conduct. Today, black neighborhoods are primarily where the majority of black people eat and sleep. They do not embody the criteria for a functional community. Consequently, black neighborhoods are typically referred to as ghettos, urban areas, inner cities, or they are sometimes identified by terms such as the hood. These broad, ambiguous terms signal the dependent, non competitive nature of black geographical areas across the country. Developing a true sense of community. What is a sense of community and why is it important? A sense of community is the collective thinking, saying, and behaving as we, 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 not as me. Social integration has intensified our need for a strong sense of community or a sense of peoplehood. Having abandoned their quasi communities, schools, and businesses for the integration promised land, many black Americans cannot easily return to physical physical communities that are primarily black. Those who cannot return can exercise an option. They can identify with black physical communities and organizations via their mindset, actions, and support. Those who cannot return can exercise an option. It can identify with black physical communities and organizations via their mindset, actions, and support. This strong identification and support is what is commonly referred to as a sense of community or sense of peoplehood. It is what people feel when they have a strong psychological identification with a physical community and its inhabitants. They are attracted to and desire the cultural familiarity, security, and satisfaction they receive from association with these communities. The psychological damage blacks have experienced as a result of slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and racism will pose significant challenges to developing a strong sense of community. The impact of social engineering of on communities. The impact of social engineering on communities. Throughout the relationship between blacks and whites, the majority white society has kept black Americans under various forms of control, physical, legal, and symbolic. The majority society, through its primary institutions, has used rudimentary sociological and psychological principles to control blacks and deprive them of their sense of peoplehood. In such a state, black people could easily be misled into inappropriate behavior, identifying with the oppressor groups and hating their own people. It is not a conspiracy theory. The facts are evident in the marked inequalities between the races and the continued inappropriate behavior patterns of black Americans. There is no other way to explain why historical inequalities remain unchanged and black Americans continue to cede and surrender their wealth and resource powers to their competitors while their own family, community, and the race as a whole remain powerless and impoverished. These are neither innate nor normal behavior characteristics. So let us examine their origins. Research suggests that aberrant group behaviors among blacks began in 1710 and were formalized into law when the Virginia colonial government introduced meritorious manumission, a public policy that was used to condition and instill internal controls into the psyche of enslaved blacks. The practice rewarded blacks who saw slavery through the eyes of the white society, were willing to work against their own group's best interest and inform on members of their race who were planning to escape and free other blacks. This social engineering effectively destroyed most black people's sense of community, trust, and accountability. Through though undocumented, many black Americans believe that soon after its inception, meritorious manumission was merged into what we now call Willie Lynchism. According to popular belief, Willie Lynch came to Jamestown, Virginia in 1712, offering a mind controlling ideology to destroy black people's sense of community. A professional slave trainer, Willie Lynch offered the slaveholders a conditioning system that he guaranteed would instill internal controls that would effectively divide blacks for centuries. He proposed that slave masters create divisions among blacks and separate them along the lines of gender, age, tribe, culture, class, class, rank, and skin color. To this day, the effects of Willie Lynchism continue to encourage black individualism, selfishness, and self hatred. Through slavery and Jim Crow semi slavery, officially, though, though slavery and Jim Crow semi slavery officially ended in 1865 and 1954, respectively, no formal records are known to have been kept that explain the principles and techniques involved in the conditioning process. If our goal is to build functional communities, we can, however, understand the techniques and methods that were used to destroy our sense of community. Uh, we can more fully understand what happened if we analyze a similar and better documented mind control experiment that occurred during the Korean War of the 1950s. Okay. Meritorious manumission versus brainwashing. Both American soldiers held in North Korean prisoner of war camps, POW camps, during the 1950s, and enslaved black people were psychosocially and physiologically manipulated in parallel ways. The communist North Korean army and its Chinese consorts used brainwashing on American soldiers. Slavery used conditioning. The biggest difference between the two systems was the extreme physical cruelty of slavery. Both systems were designed to tear people apart. In many ways, communist brainwashing was a combination of meritorious manumission and Willie Lynchism. It was a sophisticated form of re education that operated like group therapy run in reverse. But unlike group therapy, unlike group therapy intended to bring people together, communist brainwashing and meritorious manumission were designed to drive people apart from one another. The larger purpose of these social conditioning systems was to destroy the ability of the subjects to form natural groups and communities, develop normal relationships, support, protect, 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 and communicate with members of their own group. Table 2 offers a brief comparative analysis of the brainwashing of military captives in North Korea and China over a 3 year period and the meritorious manumission policies, Willie Lynchism, imposed on blacks for several centuries. The table compares the similarities between the goals, psychological principles, rewards, punishments, and resultant behavior changes. The results of the two systems were nearly identical in every respect, but in each instance, the subjects identified with their oppressors and were often unwilling to return to former communities to be with their own people. The brainwashed POWs who survived were hospitalized in the program. No such therapy has ever been offered to black Americans. Table 2, meritorious manumission versus communist brainwashing, a comparison of conditioning and control techniques. Meritorious manumission slash Willie Lynchism, time period 1710 to 1860s. Communist POW brainwashing, time period 1950 to 1954. Subjects: nearly 15 million African slaves on plantations throughout the Americas. Subjects: nearly 7,000 white American POW camps in North Korea. Yeah. All right. Goal: to control a large group of captured slaves and make them hardworking, fearful, dependent, docile, submissive, and loyal labor tools to build wealth for captors. Okay? Goal: to control a large group of captured POWs using minimum resources, make them combative, dependent, and compliant to be used as propaganda tools. Program: a system of dehumanizing and social and a system of dehumanizing and physiological conditioning using elementary principles of physical, emotional, intellectual deprivation. Conducted by slave masters of third with the equivalent of third and fourth grade education. All right, program. Okay, a system of re-education and indoctrination using fundamental principles of psychology in a perverted way, conducted by communists with master's degrees in social sciences. Mm-hmm. All right, meritorious manumission, Willie Lynchism. Transported into hostile lands, made a minority and totally dependent, totally deprived of family, hope, and basic necessities, regarded for identifying with slave master, or rewarded for identifying with slave master. Communist POW brainwashing procedure. Transported into North Korea, isolated from support systems, subjected to various forms of deprivation with rewards and punishments, divided by military rank. All right, the meritorious manumission slash Willie Lynchism. Reaction of enslaved blacks. Internalized white values and fear of oppressors. Eroded group self-interest and abandoned code of conduct. Displayed self-hate. Exhibited difficulty trusting and cooperating with blacks. Communist POW brainwashing. Reaction of prisoners. Acquiesced and colluded with captors. Compromised on principles. Became individualistic, selfish, and withdrawn. Abandoned code of conduct. Unable to organize and trust. Built mental prisons within their own minds. Meritorious manumission, Willie Lynchism. Success rate. After 360 years, 36 million descendants of slaves have the shortest life expectancy, low self esteem, remain divided and non competitive. They remain fearful and continue to seek white approval and rewards that come with being Sambos and sellouts. Communist, communist POW brainwashing success rate. Only 2,000 of the original 7,000 American POWs survived. Most POW camps had no guards or fences, yet no one American POW escaped in an organized attempt. Survivors remain withdrawn. POWs became turncoats against their own country.